The richest man in all of Montana Territory had just sent his 20th hopeful bride packing when a gunshot split the air. Ethan Blackwood never even flinched. He was used to the sound of desperation on his frozen lands. But he sure was not ready to find a lone woman at his gate the next morning, asking for absolutely nothing. In a world where every soul wanted a piece of him, she was the one who did not. This is the story of how a hard-hearted cattle baron finally opened his doors, only to find that the one bride nobody wanted was the only one he ever needed. Stick around to the end, hit that like button, and tell me what city you are from. In the winter of 1882, a brutal cold fell over northern Montana. The snow piled up so high it swallowed fence posts, and the wind had a bite that could steal the warmth right out of a man's soul. But a different kind of chill had settled inside the Blackwood mansion. It had everything to do with the man who owned it all. Another carriage rattled away through the snow, carrying one more failed bride back to town. Ethan Blackwood had stopped keeping count. Was she number 18 or number 20? They all started to blend together. The women came with fake smiles and prepared speeches, but their eyes always gave them away, gazing at his fine furniture and grand rooms. His foreman, Samuel, appeared in the doorway. "Boss, the Hendrickson girl is gone," he said, his voice full of worry. "Her daddy will not be happy. That was the third daughter he sent you." "Then maybe Hendrickson should teach his girls that a man is more than his money," Ethan shot back, his voice smooth but sharp as a razor. He had learned to talk like that back in Boston before he came home to claim his ranch. Samuel shifted his feet on the wooden floor. "Folks in town are talking, Ethan. They say you are impossible. Some say you are just too proud for your own good," Samuel warned. "Let them talk," Ethan said, finally turning around. At 34 years old, he was a handsome man, tall and strong with dark hair and stormy eyes. His face had the hard, sharp lines of a man who got what he wanted. "Their words mean nothing to me." "Maybe so," Samuel admitted. He had known Ethan his whole life and watched him build walls around himself. "But this winter is going to be a long one. A man should not be by himself in a place this big." A flicker of something pained showed in Ethan's eyes before he hid it away. "I am not alone. I have 40 ranch hands and a house full of staff. You know that is not what I mean." "Then maybe you should say what you mean, Samuel." The old foreman sighed. He knew that wall well. "I mean, having folks around is not the same as having someone with you. There is a big difference between a full house and a full heart." Ethan took a long swallow of his whiskey. "My heart works just fine, I assure you. It does its job." "You were not always like this," Samuel said gently. "There was a time you used to believe in things." "That was a long time ago," Ethan cut him off, his voice low and cold. "And that time is gone. I built this ranch into the biggest one in 3 territories. I give more men work than anyone else. I made myself into someone who matters. That ought to be enough." "Enough for who?" Samuel asked quietly. But Ethan had already turned his back, ending the conversation. When the door closed, Ethan let out a long breath. His own reflection looked back at him from the dark window. He was a man with everything, yet he was surrounded by a crushing silence. The Blackwood estate was a monument to his success, built from fine timber and stone. Inside, crystal chandeliers hung from the ceilings, and expensive furniture filled the rooms. Every single piece was meant to show off his wealth, but it all felt empty. That evening, Ethan moved through the big house like a ghost. He ate by himself at a table big enough for 20 people. The only sound was the quiet footsteps of his servants. His bedroom was huge, with a massive bed he only ever slept on one side of. He built all of this for a reason, but that reason had turned sour years ago. It had been 7 years, but it felt like yesterday. He once believed in love. He once trusted that a woman could want him for himself, not for his name. Her name was Margaret. She had a bright smile and a laugh that made him feel like he could do anything. They met in Boston while he was studying to learn how to run the family ranch better. For 2 years, Ethan was sure he had found something real. He asked her to marry him on a spring night, with a ring that cost him all his savings. She said yes with tears in her eyes. But then his father died suddenly, and Ethan had to rush back to Montana. He thought Margaret would come with him, just like they had planned. Instead, she told him she could never leave the city for some wild frontier. "I do care for you, Ethan," she had said, and he could still hear the pity in her voice. "But I was not made for a hard life in the country." In that moment, he understood her love came with strings attached. When it came down to a choice between him and her comfortable life, she did not hesitate. He returned to Montana a broken man. He poured all of that hurt into his work. He built an empire so vast and successful that no one could ever doubt his worth again. The cruel joke was that he had become exactly the kind of powerful, wealthy man Margaret would have wanted. But in the process, he had sealed off his heart, making it impossible to feel the love he once craved. Now women came to him, but he saw right through their polite act. They all wanted what he had built. They wanted the security and the status of being Mrs. Blackwood. Not a single one of them had ever asked him what he dreamed about or what kept him up at night. They saw him as a solution to their problems, a quick path to an easy life. None of them truly saw him at all. "Better this way," he mumbled to himself that night, standing on his cold balcony. He looked out over the barns and pastures that were all his. It was better to be alone than to be seen as nothing more than a walking bank account. Down in the bunkhouse, Samuel sat with some of the older ranch hands. These were men who remembered a younger, happier Ethan. "He sent another one away," said Robert, the head wrangler, "a woman who could gentle the wildest horse." Old Samuel just nodded, tamping tobacco into his pipe. The middle Hendrickson girl, a sweet thing, he thought, and well-mannered. Would have made a fine wife for some fella, but not for Ethan, it seemed. "What in the world is he looking for?" asked Thomas, a younger hand. "The man has everything money can buy. Land, respect. Seems to me any woman would count herself lucky to have him, and that's the whole problem," Samuel said, lighting his pipe. "He ain't looking for a woman who feels lucky. He's looking for a partner." Thomas looked plain confused. "Ain't that the same thing?" Robert, another old-timer, shook his head. "No, son. One is about what you can get. The other is about who you are with." Ethan learned that lesson the hard way. "It's a lonely way to live," Thomas said quietly. "It surely is," Samuel agreed. "But I reckon he's forgotten how to live any other way. He's built a fortress around himself and is now trapped inside. A woman who does not need him one bit. Someone with her own grit, her own reasons for getting up in the morning. All these fancy girls, they're just looking for a man to finish their story. Ethan needs a woman whose story is already whole, who would just be willing to share it." "That is a tall order," Samuel grunted. "Women like that are too busy living their own lives to go husband hunting." "Maybe so," Robert said. "But maybe that is exactly why it would work." Up at the big house, Ethan finally came in from the biting cold. He walked through the dark, silent hallways, the echo of his own boots his only company. In his study, he poured a whiskey and sat in the worn leather chair that had belonged to his father, and his father's father before him. On the wall hung a painting of his parents. His father looked stern and proud, his mother calm and beautiful. They had something real. His father was a hard man, but his mother had loved him completely, seeing past the rough bark to the good wood underneath. Ethan wondered if that kind of love had died with her. He wondered if the world had just turned colder, or if the cold was just inside him now. The whiskey burned, but brought no warmth. Nothing seemed to anymore. The next morning was gray and bitter. Ethan was up before the sun, dressed in his usual denim and flannel. He might have been rich, but he always dressed for the work that needed doing. He was in the stables, checking on a lame mare when Samuel found him. "Boss, you got a visitor at the gate." Ethan did not look up. Just tell whoever sent their daughter that my answer is still no. I do not think a father sent this one, Samuel said carefully. And she sure did not arrive in a fancy carriage. That got Ethan's attention. What do you mean? I mean, she rode up on a tired-looking horse wearing clean but worn-out clothes. And she asked, polite as you please, for a moment of your time. Did she give a name? Said her name is Clara Hale. She was working over at the Morrison place, but they're shutting down the house for winter and heading back east. She is looking for a job, not a proposal. Ethan finally straightened up, wiping his hands on his jeans. In all the months of women showing up at his door, not a single one had asked for a job. Doing what? She just said she is capable and willing to work and would appreciate the chance to prove it. Samuel's tone was neutral, but Ethan knew his foreman. He would not have bothered him unless he thought this was different. Where is she? Still at the front gate. I told her to wait there. Every bone in his body told him to send her away, to keep his walls up. But a powerful curiosity, and the sheer surprise of it all made him nod. Fine. I will see her in the kitchen. Give me 10 minutes. As Samuel walked away, Ethan caught the barest hint of approval in the old man's eyes. Ethan took the long way to the house, trying to figure out what to expect. A woman looking for work this time of year spoke of either pure grit or pure desperation. He was not sure which one worried him more. The kitchen was warm, filled with the smell of the noon meal cooking on the big stove. His cook, Martha, just raised an eyebrow at him as Samuel led the woman inside. Ethan's first thought was that Clara Hale looked nothing like the others. They had all worn their Sunday best, with fancy hair and practiced smiles. This woman was in a simple wool dress, her hair in a plain braid. She was maybe in her mid-20s with strong cheekbones and startlingly clear blue eyes. But it was the way she held herself that got his attention. She stood tall without being stiff, and her gaze was direct. There was a quiet stillness about her, like a person who knew her own worth and did not need anyone else to prove it. "Mr. Blackwood," she said, her voice low and even. "Thank you for your time. I apologize for showing up unannounced." "Samuel says you are looking for work," Ethan said, getting straight to the point. "What kind?" "Whatever you need done," Clara answered simply. "I can cook, clean, and mend. I can manage household accounts. I can handle horses and livestock. I am strong and healthy. I do not drink, I do not cause trouble, and I do not quit." She said it all as a plain statement of fact. Ethan looked closer, seeing the calluses on her hands and the worn leather of her boots. "Where are you from?" "Pennsylvania. My father was a farmer. I learned to work hard from a young age. What brought you all the way to Montana?" There was a small pause, the first crack in her steady calm. "My husband. We came out here 3 years ago. He passed away last spring." "I am sorry for your loss," Ethan said automatically. Clara's face did not change. "Thank you, but it was not a tragedy. It was not a happy marriage." The honesty of it hit Ethan like a cold wind. Most women would have played the grieving widow for sympathy. And the Morrisons, they were kind enough to hire me on after he passed. But they are moving back to Boston for good. I can give you references. "Why here?" Ethan asked. "Why my ranch?" For the first time, a small, knowing smile touched her lips. "Because you have a reputation, Mr. Blackwood. Word gets around. Everyone in town knows you have been turning away hopeful brides. I figured a man who does not want a wife might have a need for an employee who just wants a job." It was so logical it almost made him laugh. "You are not looking to get married?" he asked. "I have been married," Clara said flatly. "Once was more than enough." There was a whole story in those few words. "I am not here to make your life complicated, Mr. Blackwood," she said, her voice firm. "I am here because winter is coming. I need a job, and you have a big ranch that needs work, that is all. No promises asked for, and none given, beyond a fair wage for a hard day's labor." He looked at her and saw something he had not seen in any other woman. There was no scheming in her eyes, no hidden plan. It should have made him hire her on the spot. Instead, it made him wary. "Nobody is that simple, Mrs. Hale. Everyone wants something more than just wages." "You are right," she said softly. "I want a warm place to sleep and food on the table. For some of us, Mr. Blackwood, that is more than enough. Mr. Blackwood, I'm looking for honest work and a wage that lets me put a little something aside. I'm tired of staring down another winter and wondering if I'll see the thaw. But I aim to earn every single penny. I'm not asking for a handout, just a fair trade of my labor for your pay. Over at the counter, Martha was chopping vegetables like they had personally offended her, pretending not to listen. She finally cleared her throat. Boss, I could sure use the help, and this house is too big for just the 3 girls. Ethan shot his cook a look that said he knew her game, but she just smiled. He turned back to Clara, who stood there with quiet pride, her cheeks red from the cold. You understand this is just a job? Ethan said slowly. Nothing more. I understand perfectly, Clara answered. You made it clear you don't want a wife. Well, I don't want a husband. Sounds to me like we'll get along just fine. She said it so plainly that Ethan found himself agreeing before he even meant to. All right. A 2-week trial. You'll work with Martha and help run the house. Standard wages, same as the others, room and board included. If it works out, we will talk about staying on. If not, you will get 2 weeks' pay. That is more than fair, Clara said. This time, her smile was real, making her face mighty compelling. Thank you, Mr. Blackwood. We will see, Ethan replied. But as he said it, he felt a little crack in the wall he had built around himself. He tried to tell himself she was just another hand. But watching her roll up her sleeves and get right to work, he felt something he had not felt in 7 long years. It felt a little like hope, but he shoved that feeling down deep and went back outside to his work. For the first 3 days, Clara moved through that house like a quiet stream, getting things done without a single fuss. She was up before the sun, helping Martha cook a mountain of breakfast for the ranch hands. When Ethan came down, the smell of coffee and bacon filled the air. And Clara would be cleaning up, never looking him in the eye, but always knowing he was there. He caught himself watching her. She never made a single wasted move. Her mending was neat and strong, the kind of work done by someone who knew how to make things last. On the 3rd night, Martha found him in his study. She is good, Ethan, real good, has a good head on her shoulders. 3 of the boys brought her torn gear today, and she fixed it all, no complaints. Martha had been with his family for 20 years and never minced words. You made a good choice, even if it was for stubborn reasons. I do not know what you are talking about. Sure you do not, she scoffed. You hired her because she is the first woman to walk in here who was not looking for a ring. I hired her because you said you needed help, Ethan muttered. I said I could use it, Martha corrected. But whatever the reason, she is good for this place. It has been too quiet for too long. After she left, Ethan sat in the dark, listening to the low sounds of them cleaning up. It was the sound of a home, not just a house. The very next day, things changed. Ethan was out checking the herd before a storm. A young hand named Billy, barely 19, came galloping up fast. Boss, we have trouble. One of the new mares got spooked and kicked her stall apart. She cut herself up real bad on the wood. Martha sent me, Billy yelled. Mrs. Hale is with her, but she's bleeding bad. Ethan was already in the saddle. They rode hard back to the barn. Inside, a mare was wild-eyed with pain, blood down her leg. And in the stall, with that 1,000 pounds of pure panic, was Clara. She had one hand on the horse's neck and a cloth pressed to the wound, talking to her in a low, steady voice. Easy now, girl. We are going to help you. She did not flinch, did not show a single ounce of fear. Ethan eased into the stall. How long? About 20 minutes, Clara said, her eyes never leaving the horse. She is settling some. She has lost a lot of blood. The dock is hours away, Samuel called out from the doorway. The mare could not wait. Ethan looked at Clara, who held that horse steady with nothing but her nerve. Can you keep her calm while I stitch her up? For the first time, her eyes met his. There was no fear in them, only resolve. Yes. Then do not move. Samuel, get me hot water, cloths, a heavy needle, and whiskey. For the next hour, Ethan cleaned and stitched the deep gashes. The whole time, Clara never stopped talking to the mare, her voice a low, soothing murmur that calmed the panicked animal better than any rope ever could have. You are not alone, she murmured to the horse. Ethan realized she was not just talking to the animal. Her words came from a place of knowing real fear and pain herself. When he tied the last stitch, the mare was standing quiet and exhausted. Clara still had a hand on her neck. She will be all right, Ethan said, his voice husky. You did a good job. So did you, Clara answered. The look in her eyes was one of pure respect, and it made him turn away. As the men settled the horse for the night, he and Clara walked back to the house. The snow was coming down steady now, their breath making clouds in the cold air. Where in the world did you learn to handle horses like that? Ethan asked. My daddy kept draft horses for his farm, she told him. I grew up with them and learned pretty quick that they are a lot like people. They just want to know someone is paying attention, that they are not weathering a storm all by themselves. Clara gave him a look he could not quite figure out. Not everyone sees it that way. No, I reckon they do not. Some folks prefer to stand against everything alone. They figure it is safer. Safer, Ethan repeated, unsure if she was just saying it or accusing him of it. When they got to the back door, Clara stopped. Mr. Blackwood, can I ask you a question? You can ask. Why did you really bring me here? Martha is a sharp judge of character, and she says you did it because I did not want a thing from you. But that is not the whole truth, is it? You hired me to prove a point. Ethan felt a tightness in his chest. And what point do you think I was trying to prove? That you could keep someone at a distance even while they lived under your own roof. That you could be near a person without risking a single thing. Her voice was soft, but her words hit like rocks. I recognize it because I am doing the exact same thing. We both are. We are two people who learned the hard way that wanting things is just asking for trouble. So we have talked ourselves into believing we do not want anything at all. You do not know a thing about me, Ethan said, and he could hear the hard edge in his own voice. No, I do not. And you do not know a thing about me, and maybe that is exactly the way we both want it to be. Clara opened the door, then turned back one last time. But for what it is worth, Mr. Blackwood, you were good to that horse today, patient and steady. Whatever walls you have built, they do not go all the way down to the foundation. That is something, at least. She went inside before he could find an answer, leaving him in the falling snow with a storm churning in his gut. That night, unable to find any rest, Ethan ended up in the library. He hardly ever used the room, a place he had built as a sanctuary with its tall shelves and fine books. But it felt more like a museum, cold and lifeless. He was at the window, watching the snow drift, when he heard quiet footsteps. Could not sleep either. Clara's voice was a quiet apology. She had on a simple dressing gown, and her hair was down around her shoulders for the first time he had seen. It made her seem younger, more open. I'm sorry, I did not mean to disturb you. I just wanted a book. You are not disturbing anything. Help yourself to whatever you like. Clara went to the shelves, tracing the spines of the books with respect. I have not been in a room like this since I left Pennsylvania. My father had his books, but nothing like this. Do you miss Pennsylvania? She was quiet for a long moment. I miss the person I was there. Does that make any sense? I miss the girl who believed things would work out if you just tried hard enough and had good intentions. I do not miss the place. What changed? Clara took a book from the shelf and turned to him. The firelight flickered in her eyes. I married a man I did not love because my father needed the help. Jacob Hale had money and a claim out here. My father had debts and a failing farm. It was a practical arrangement. Everyone called it practical. She said the word like it was poison. And was it? Ethan asked, the question surprising him. Practical? Oh, it was very practical. Jacob got a wife who worked hard and kept quiet. My father saved his farm, and I learned just how much of yourself you can lose living with someone who sees you as a part of a deal. Her honesty felt like a physical blow. He hurt you. Not in the way you mean. He never laid a hand on me. But there are other ways to hurt a person, Mr. Blackwood. Slower ways. Jacob was not cruel. He was just gone. Even sitting in the same room, he was a million miles away. I was just the woman who made his meals and mended his shirts. She stopped, and he saw her hand tighten on the book she held. He died in his sleep one night. His heart just gave out. When I found him the next morning, you know what I felt? Nothing. Not sorrow, not even relief. Just nothing at all. And that was the thing that scared me the most, that 3 years with him had hollowed me out completely, that I had become as absent as he was. But you did not, Ethan said quietly. I saw you with that mare today. You felt plenty. Clara looked at him then, truly looked at him, and he felt a current of understanding pass between them, a recognition of similar wounds. Animals are easier than people, she said softly. They do not pretend to care when they do not. They do not turn you into something useful and have the nerve to call it love. The words settled in the space between them. Ethan spoke before he could think. 7 years ago, I was engaged to a woman in Boston, Margaret Chelnam. I believed she loved me for me. It turned out she loved the man she thought I would be, someone who could keep her in the life she was used to. When I had to come back here and run this ranch, she ended it. She said she simply could not live this kind of life. And that is why you turn away any woman who gets close, Clara said. It was not a question. You are waiting for one who wants no part of the life you have made. I'm not waiting for anything, Ethan said. But he knew it was a lie as soon as the words left his mouth. Clara stepped a little closer. In the light from the fireplace, her face was a mix of angles and shadows. I think you are. I think you are waiting for someone to want you. Just you, not everything that comes with you. But here is the problem with that, Mr. Blackwood. That is just another kind of transaction. You are still asking someone to prove their love by giving something up. You are just asking for a different kind of payment. The truth of it struck him in a place he had never dared to look. You have turned it all into a test, she said, her voice gentle but firm. If a woman wants your money or your name, she fails. If she does not, then she might be worthy. But you have forgotten that people can want both. They can love you and also appreciate the good life you have built. One does not make the other a lie. You say that, but you made a mistake marrying for practical reasons. I made a mistake because the practical reasons were all there was. There was no affection, no respect, no real company. But if all of that had been there, if I had cared for him and he for me, then the practical side would have just been a bonus. That would not have been wrong. That would have been smart. Ethan felt a long-held belief inside him begin to crack. Then why did you tell me you were done with it all? Why are you not looking for that now? Clara's smile was sad and full of wisdom. Because I am just as scared as you are, Mr. Blackwood. It is easier to say I do not need anyone than to risk needing someone and being wrong again. We are not so different. We are both hiding behind our reasons and telling ourselves we chose to be alone. The truth was both a heavy weight and a sudden relief. They stood in the quiet library, two people who had been strangers just a week ago, and for the first time in years, Ethan felt truly seen. I do not know how to be any other way, he admitted, the words feeling like they were pulled from deep inside him. I do not know how to want something without expecting it to break. I do not either, Clara said plainly. So maybe we just stop trying. We could just be here, two people who get what it is like to be scared of wanting things. No pretending, no proving. Just honesty when we can find it, and quiet when we cannot. Agreeing to stay broken should have felt like a loss. Instead, it was a relief. I can do that, Ethan said. Good. Clara paused at the door. Thank you for not treating me like I'm made of glass. Jacob did that after I was honest with him. It was just another way of not really seeing me. I will not make that mistake, Ethan promised. He stayed by the fire until dawn, feeling a dangerous but needed shift between them. They had agreed to keep their walls up, but just admitting they were there made them feel a little less solid. The storm we had been watching finally hit hard. It dumped 2 feet of snow overnight, and the air got so cold it felt brittle. The ranch hands worked double time to keep the livestock safe. In the main house, the pipes froze solid. Clara spent half the day with the handyman getting the water running again. Martha took stock of their supplies, worrying if they had enough to see them through. Ethan was a blur of motion all over the ranch. He was in the barns with the animals and on the roof, knocking down ice. He worked until his muscles burned and his hands were numb. He was grateful for the pure physical work, which left no space for the tangled feelings from the night before. Late in the day, he stumbled into the kitchen, frozen and hungry. He found Clara and Martha making a big dinner for all the hands. "Sit down," Martha ordered when she saw him. "You look about half gone. Clara, get this man some coffee and stew." Ethan tried to argue, but Clara was already setting a full bowl and a hot mug in front of him. He ate while watching the two women work. They moved together easily, like they had been doing it for years. It was a partnership built on respect, and seeing it made something in Ethan's chest ache. "We are going to need more firewood brought up," Martha said, "and someone needs to check on old Jim. His cough sounded bad this morning." "I will get the wood," Ethan said. "Samuel can check on Jim." "The devil you will," Martha shot back. "You have been running yourself ragged. One of the young fellas can get it. You need to sit for more than 5 minutes." "I am fine." "You are stubborn is what you are," Martha mumbled, but here was love in her voice. She had been saying it to him for 20 years. Clara looked over from her bread dough, her hands dusted with flour. "The mayor is doing better, by the way. She is putting weight on that leg." "That is good," Ethan said, feeling a wave of relief. "That is real good. You did good work yesterday," Clara added. "You have steady hands and a lot of patience." It was a simple compliment, but it warmed him more than the hot coffee. He was not used to being praised for what he could do, only for what he had. The evening passed in that same busy warmth. More hands came in from the cold, their talk and laughter filling the big kitchen. Tonight, Clara was right in the middle of it all. She served food and shot back witty replies that surprised everyone, including Ethan. When Robert the Wrangler asked if she was staying on for good, she just smiled. "That depends on if you all learn to wipe the snow off your boots." The men all laughed, and Ethan found himself smiling too. She was still quiet, but there was a new spark in her. It was like their talk last night gave her permission to take up a little more room in the world. Later, after the kitchen was clean, Ethan went to the stables to check on the mayor. He was not alone for long. Clara appeared in the doorway, wrapped in a heavy coat. "I had a feeling I might find you here," she said. They stood in the quiet dark of the stables, watching the mayor by the light of a single lantern. The silence felt easy between them. "You carried yourself different with the hands tonight," Ethan said. "Like you were really here." Clara nodded. "I figured I ought to take my own advice. Felt wrong to call you out for hiding when I was doing the same." "And how does that feel?" he asked. "Scary," she admitted, "but good too. Like I am remembering how to be a person again, not just some machine." Ethan knew that feeling all too well. "I have been playing a part for 7 years," he confessed. "Sometimes I forget the man I was before." "He is the man who proposed with his own hard-earned money," she said gently. "The one who came back to save this place and work shoulder to shoulder with his crew. That man is still in there, Mr. Blackwood. Success just buried him deep." He looked at her. "Ethan, if we are going to keep tearing down walls like this, you ought to call me Ethan." A smile lit up her whole face. "All right, Ethan, and I am Clara. Mrs. Hale is a ghost. I am done with." They talked until the chill sent them indoors, sharing stories of how they had learned to shield their hearts from the world. It was not courtship. It was just two souls learning a dangerous honesty with one another. As Ethan later climbed the stairs, he reckoned that was a revolution in itself. A storm kept them snowed in for 3 days. In that time, the careful space between them began to thaw, slow and steady like ice in the spring sun. A quiet routine formed between them. They shared silent dawns in the kitchen with coffee, and long evenings in the library. Sometimes they would meet late in the stables, making excuses to check on the animals. They talked about anything and everything, except for the change growing between them. Out in the bunkhouse, the hands noticed it all. It is different, Robert whispered to Samuel. The boss, he actually smiles some now. And that hard look he always wore, like he was waiting for the next bad thing to happen, is gone. The men knew their boss had turned down a score of fancy women, yet here he was spending his nights talking to the widow. Maybe he is just glad to have help that is not trying to rope him into marriage, Samuel grumbled, though he did not sound convinced. From his bunk, young Thomas spoke up. Or maybe she understands something those others did not. And what is that? Robert asked. That you cannot take a fortress by force. You have to wait for the man inside to lower the drawbridge himself. Samuel just smoked his pipe, thinking the kid was onto something. Meanwhile, Ethan found that because Clara asked for nothing, he wanted to give her everything. She never pried, so he found himself telling her about his day or sharing old memories. Her independence only made him want to be near her more. The storm had passed, leaving behind a cold, star-filled sky. After a long day checking fence lines, a tired and frozen Ethan found Clara by the library fire. She was reading the same novel. "You still on that book?" he asked, taking off his coat. "A good story should be savored," she answered. "I know the ending, and I am in no hurry to reach it." He went for a whiskey, then stopped. "Can I get you something to drink?" "I do not have much taste for spirits," she said. The words tumbled out of him before he could stop them. "Because of your husband?" Clara simply closed her book. "No. Jacob drank more than enough for the two of us. I just never cared for it." Ethan set his own glass down. "I will get you some tea." "You do not have to." "I know," he said. "I want to." He came back with 2 cups of tea. She noticed, but said nothing. They sat together in the firelight, the quiet crackle of the flames between them. "Tell me about Boston," Clara finally said. Ethan settled back, letting the tea warm his hands. "It was loud and crowded, full of people in a hurry. I was there 2 years for school, living with a half-dozen other fellas. We thought we were the smartest men in the world, talking big ideas in coffee shops." "And Margaret?" she asked. "Where did she fit in?" "She was my professor's daughter. I met her while she was serving punch at some university get-together, and she looked like she would rather be anywhere else on earth. She told me she was tired of just looking pretty and wanted to be in the library reading about the world. She made me feel like I could be more than just a rancher. We would walk all over that city, talking for hours. She dreamed of seeing all the grand cities in Europe. And I wanted to build something that would last. We made all sorts of crazy plans to do it all." "So what happened?" Clara asked. Ethan stared into his cup for a long time. "Life happened. My father passed, and I had to come home right away. This place was about to go under. I had debts I never knew about. I had to choose. Stay in Boston with her or come back here and fight for this ranch. I chose the ranch. I begged her to come with me, promised her everything. But she told me, real calm-like, that she could not live so far from a bookstore and be a rancher's wife instead of a professor's daughter." Clara set her cup down. She was not wrong for knowing her own heart. He was stunned. "You are taking her side?" "I am saying she was honest. Marrying you would have been the cruel thing, making you both miserable for years. It surely did not feel like a kindness then, but you survived. You came back and made this ranch the best in the territory, just like you said you would." In the firelight, Ethan saw only understanding in her eyes, not pity. "You keep doing that," he said. "What is that?" "Showing me a different way to see my own stories. Maybe it is because I spent 3 years telling myself I was Jacob's victim. It took a long time to see I was just as absent in our marriage as he was. He treated me like a business deal," Clara said, pulling her knees to her chest. "But I let him. I never fought for anything better with him. I never said what we had was not enough. I just took it and told myself I was being practical. But I was just being a coward. It is not like that." "It is," Clara said softly. "I was afraid that if I asked for more, his rejection would hurt worse than the emptiness we already had. So I chose a slow fade over a quick pain. Then he died, and I knew I had wasted 3 years married to a ghost. Her raw honesty hit Ethan hard. Is that why you came out here? Why you took this job? Partly. After Jacob died, 2 men in town made me offers. One told me he would be willing to marry me in exchange for taking care of his house and kids, like it was a job opening. I told him I would sooner starve. Then I saved every penny and promised myself I would never again be treated like a convenience. When my last job ended, I had enough money to last a few months. Coming here was a gamble, but it was better than going home and admitting my father was right to sell me off. It was better than becoming small and quiet and grateful for whatever scraps a man threw my way. Clara's voice was fierce now, showing the steel underneath all that quiet. I could not do it, Ethan. I could not go back to being that person. So, I chose this uncertainty over a life of shame. Something inside Ethan finally broke. You are not small or quiet. I am quiet, she said, but that is not the same as small. I am learning the difference. They sat in a comfortable silence after that, just being together in the dark. I do not know how to do this, Ethan finally said, his voice rough. Do what? This. Being around someone who sees right through my defenses but does not use them against me. I do not know how to trust that you are not just waiting to ask for something. Clara stood and walked to the window, looking out at the snowy ranch. I am not waiting for anything, Ethan. I meant what I said. I just want to be here, doing work that matters, and talking to someone who gets it. If this is all it ever is, it is more than I had before. But what if it turns into more? The question slipped out raw and real. Clara turned to look at him. Then we will figure it out when it happens. We cannot live our lives afraid of what might go wrong. Margaret hurt you. Jacob hurt me. We both learned how to build walls. But sometimes a fortress is just a cage. He sat with her words long after she left, turning them over in the quiet dark. She was right. He had built walls to keep the world out, but he had locked himself inside with his own ghosts. The real question was if he had the grit to unlock the door. The next morning brought trouble that neither of them saw coming. Samuel found Ethan in the barn, his face grim. Boss, we got company. Henry Hendrickson and his wife just rolled up. Ethan's jaw set hard. Hendrickson was the father of a girl he had already turned away. He was a railroad man with big ideas and a bad habit of treating every conversation like a horse trade. What's he want? Says it is business, but his wife is with him. She and Martha are already headed for the main house. I reckon they are here for one last try. I already gave them my answer. I know it, and you know it. But it seems they figure you just need a little more persuading. Ethan bit back a curse and stalked toward the house, Samuel right behind him. He found Hendrickson in his study, making himself at home. From the kitchen, he could hear the women talking. Blackwood, Hendrickson boomed, shaking his hand with a grip that was all for show. I appreciate you seeing me. I have a proposal I think you will find mighty interesting. My answer about your daughter has not changed, Hendrickson. I made that clear, and I respect that, I surely do. But just hear me out. You are building something big here, Blackwood. Anyone with eyes can see it. But a big operation needs connections to move its goods. My railroad could be a lifeline for this ranch. Together, we could... Together, Ethan said, his voice gone low and tight. You mean if I marry your girl, you will use your railroad to help my ranch? Is that your offer? I am offering a partnership for our mutual gain. Your cattle would get top priority and lower rates. My friends in Chicago could open doors for you. All I am asking is for you to give Elizabeth another thought. She is a fine, educated girl. She would make the perfect wife for a man of your standing. Ethan felt a cold anger settle deep in his gut. My standing? A man with your kind of land and money needs a wife who can handle herself in high society. Elizabeth can do that. And what about what Elizabeth wants? Ethan asked, though he already knew the answer. Did you bother to ask if she wanted to marry a man who already said no? Hendrickson's smile twitched. Elizabeth knows her duty to her family. She is willing— Stop! Ethan's voice cut sharp across the room. Get out of my house. Now, hold on. You are offering me a business deal dressed up as a wedding. You are trying to trade your daughter like she is a prize steer. The answer is no. This ranch will stand on its own 2 feet, not on a marriage deal I was cornered into. Hendrickson's face turned beet red. You are making a big mistake, Blackwood. A man cannot do it all alone. Ethan's voice turned to ice. You and your wife will leave now. He turned and walked out, leaving Hendrickson fuming. In the kitchen, Mrs. Hendrickson was having tea with Martha, while Clara stood off to the side, her expression unreadable. Mrs. Hendrickson, Ethan said flatly, I am afraid this visit is over. Mrs. Hendrickson slammed her cup down. You are being completely unreasonable, Mr. Blackwood. I am sure she is a fine young woman, and I hope she finds a man who wants her for who she is, not for her father's railroad. But that man is not me. He met her glare until she looked away. He waited as she collected her things and stormed out to find her husband. After they were gone, Samuel shut the door behind them. Ethan felt the fight drain right out of him. Well, Martha said with a grin, that was some afternoon show. That man had the gall to tell me his daughter's pot roast was famous in 3 counties. I told him my pot roast was famous in 5 and I was not selling it for a ring. Ethan almost cracked a smile. He looked over at Clara, who was watching him with a quiet intensity. Are you all right? She asked softly. I'm fine. Just weary of folks who think every last thing has a price tag. Not everything does, Clara said. Her tone made him really look at her. She held his gaze for a beat before turning to help Martha with the tea service. Later that night, Ethan was in the library again, unable to rest. He poured a whiskey, needing the burn to cut through the anger still simmering inside him. He was staring into the flames when Clara appeared in the doorway wrapped in a robe. You have got a lot on your mind, she said. Looks like I am not the only one. She came in and sat in her usual chair. Hendrickson offered me his daughter like she was a piece of property. The worst part is she probably went right along with it, just nodding her head because that is what she was told to do. Maybe, Clara said gently. Or maybe she felt just like I did once. So convinced she was not worth more that she would take any offer and call it a blessing. Her words hit him hard. Is that what you think? Some of them, probably. The same way I settled for Jacob. The same way you almost settled for being alone for the rest of your life. We all settle for something, Ethan. The question is if we are settling out of fear or out of wisdom, and how can a man tell the difference? Clara thought for a moment. I reckon wisdom feels like peace. Fear just feels safe. From the outside, they can look the same, but on the inside, they are worlds apart. So which one am I? When I send these women away, am I being wise or just plain scared? I cannot answer that for you. Only you know what peace feels like in your own heart. Ethan finished his whiskey. The knot in his chest did not loosen one bit. I have been safe for so long, I am not sure I would know peace if it sat down next to me. Clara stood and walked over to him, closing the space between them for the first time. She sat on the arm of his chair, close enough that he could smell the clean scent of soap on her skin. Then maybe it is time you found out, she said, her voice low. Maybe it is time to stop building fences around everything. Ethan, I am not saying you should marry for business. I am saying maybe you should stop treating every new person like a threat. Maybe you should let someone get close enough to see if peace is even possible. And if it all goes wrong again, well, at least you will know you lived instead of just hiding. She stood and left before he could say a word, before he could do something foolish like ask her to stay. Good night, Ethan, she said from the door. He did not sleep that night. He just lay there in his big empty bed, and for the first time he could feel the stones of that fortress he had built start to loosen. The scariest part was not that the walls were coming down. It was that he was starting to hope he could build something better in their place. The next morning found Ethan at the kitchen table before sunrise, nursing a cup of coffee. Martha moved around him in the quiet, but things changed when Clara came down. She simply poured her own coffee and took the chair across from him. They sat in a comfortable silence as the sun began to light up the sky. It was Samuel who shattered the peace, bursting through the door with snow on his coat. "Boss, we got trouble. The north fence is down. Looks like the snow finally took it. The cattle are starting to wander off. If we do not get them rounded up, we will lose them to the storm or the wolves." Ethan was on his feet in an instant, the turmoil of the night before gone. All that mattered now was the ranch. "How many hands have we got?" "Most of them, but this will take all day, maybe more. That is a lot of country to cover in this deep snow." "Y'all get the horses ready. I will be out in 10 minutes. Ethan turned to Martha. "Go ahead and pack enough food and hot coffee for 12 men to last the day." "I can help with that," Clara offered, already heading to the pantry. "Clara, you do not have to." "I know," she said, "but I want to. Besides, you will need every hand you can get to cover that much land." "Absolutely not," Ethan stated flatly. "It is far too dangerous, and the cold is no joke. I grew up on a farm, remember? I can ride, I can rope, and I'm not scared of the cold or some cattle. You need all the help you can find, and I am able." Martha made a sound of agreement. "The girl is not wrong, boss. Your pride will not find those cattle any quicker." Ethan wanted to argue, but the part of him that built a ranch on smart thinking knew she was right. They needed every able body. "Fine," he said, "but you stay close to me or Samuel. No wandering off and no foolish risks. Understood?" Clara's smile was small but victorious. Understood. 30 minutes later, they rode into a landscape completely changed by snow and wind. The world was nothing but white and blue and a biting cold. The kind of cold that seeps through wool and leather and settles deep in your bones. Clara rode a strong horse from the stables right beside Ethan, her face covered and her eyes focused. They located the broken fence exactly where Samuel told them it would be. Posts had snapped under the heavy snow, with wire twisted and buried in the drifts. Beyond the break, cattle tracks scattered in every direction. Ethan divided his men into teams to search different sections of the range. He and Samuel took the northeast area, and Clara joined them, despite his worries. They rode for hours across the endless, draining land. They called out to one another when they found cattle, working to turn the spooked animals back. It was hard, miserable work. The cattle were scattered wide and were stubborn as all get out. But Clara kept pace with the men, never once complaining, her hands sure on the reins and her voice steady. Ethan kept finding his eyes drift into her instead of the rough country around them. He was just taken by how she and the horse moved together like they were one, how she always seemed to know what needed doing before a word was ever spoken. When they stopped to give the horses a breather, Samuel sidled up to him. "She's a natural, boss," he said, keeping his voice low. A little ways off, Clara was checking her saddle cinch. "Not many ladies from the city can handle this kind of work." Ethan's reply came out sharper than he intended. "She's not from the city. She's a working woman." Samuel just gave him a knowing look that said more than words ever could. Ethan had to turn away so his own face wouldn't give him away, too. They pushed on through the afternoon, gathering up the last of the scattered herd. By the time the sun started to dip low, they were bone-tired but felt good about a hard day's work. It was on the slow ride home, with the cattle moving steady in front of them, that everything changed. A horse's leg plunged into a hole hidden by the snow. The animal went down hard on one knee, sending Clara flying right over its neck. Ethan felt his own heart stop dead in his chest. He was off his horse and running before he even thought about it, plowing through the snow as Clara managed to roll clear. By the time he got to her, she was pushing herself up, gasping for air but looking whole. "Are you hurt?" he asked, his voice rough with something like panic. His hands were on her shoulders, checking her for any sign of injury. "I'm fine," Clara said, though her voice was shaky. "Just got the wind knocked out of me." She looked past him. "Is the horse okay?" Ethan barely glanced at the gelding, who was already back on its feet. "The horse is fine. You could have broken your neck." "But I didn't. I'm fine, Ethan, truly." Yet he couldn't seem to make his hands let go of her. The fear that shot through him was still pumping through his veins. "Ethan," Clara said softly, placing her gloved hands over his. "I'm all right. You can let go now." "I don't want to," he admitted. and the raw honesty of it hung in the cold air between them. They just stared at each other while the other ranch hands did their best to look busy elsewhere. Whatever walls they had carefully built between them suddenly felt like they were about to crumble. "Boss," Samuel called out, breaking the spell. "We ought to keep moving." The moment was gone. Ethan helped Clara up, gave her horse a proper look over this time, and got her back in the saddle. But something had shifted for good. He could feel it in the way she kept stealing glances at him when she thought he wasn't looking. They got the herd back to the ranch as night fell. The men headed for the bunkhouse, but Ethan found himself following Clara to the main house, just unable to let her out of his sight. In the kitchen, Martha saw the look on their faces and just started preparing hot water and food without a single question. Clara's cheeks were flushed from the cold, and her hair was coming loose from its braid. She looked tired and beautiful, and all Ethan could think about was how close he'd come to losing her. "Stop looking at me like that," Clara said, pulling off her gloves. "Like what?" "Like I'm a piece of glass about to break. You could have been killed out there." "But I wasn't," she shot back, her eyes flashing. "That's the deal with risk, Ethan. You didn't let me do anything. I chose to help. Stop trying to wrap me in cotton the same way you wrap yourself up. You think you're living safe, but that ain't really living. That's just existing real careful like." She walked out of the kitchen, leaving him standing there with her words ringing in his ears. Martha was stirring a pot on the stove, deliberately not looking at him. "Don't you start," he warned. "I ain't said a word," she replied with a little smile. "You're thinking awful loud, though." "All I'm thinking," she said, "is that girl has you figured out, and it's about time somebody did." He didn't have the energy to argue. He went to his study and poured a whiskey he never drank. His mind kept playing that moment over and over, that terrible second when her horse fell. He'd been terrified, not worried, but gut-punched with real terror. And he realized that Clara had become someone who mattered deeply to him. For 7 years he had made sure nothing and nobody could hurt him. In 1 month, this quiet woman had torn down every wall he'd built. He found her later in the library, sitting by the lamp, reading a book. She looked up as he walked in. "Can't sleep?" she asked. "Can't stop thinking," he answered, sitting on the sofa near her instead of in his usual chair. "Clara," he started, and she put her book down. "When you fell today, I've spent 7 years building this place, but I kept my heart out of it. I made sure I never cared about anything enough to be broken by losing it. Not after Margaret left." "I know," she said, her voice soft. "But watching you fall today, I realized it was too late. I've failed at keeping you at a distance. You've become someone I care about more than I can say, and it scares the hell out of me." "Why are you telling me this?" she asked after a long silence. "Because you were right," he said. "I'm tired of being safe. I'm tired of being afraid. I'm not asking you for promises you don't want to make. I just needed you to know the walls are gone." Clara stood and walked to the window. When she finally spoke, her voice was thick with feeling. "Do you know what I thought in that split second when the horse went down? I thought about how stupid I'd been. I've spent this past month trying so hard not to feel anything. I tried not to admit that being around you made me start to hope again, something I thought was too dangerous to ever do." She turned, and her eyes were shining with tears she wouldn't let fall. "I meant what I said about not wanting another husband. What I had with Jacob was just an arrangement, an empty house we shared without ever sharing ourselves. But this thing we have, building something in the quiet of the night, that is not nothing, Ethan. It is something I never knew I was missing." Ethan stood and crossed the room, his steps slow and measured. He gave her every chance to back away, but she stood her ground. He stopped close enough to see the fire dancing in her eyes. "So what do we do?" he asked softly. "We are both scared. We both think this is a terrible idea with every reason to walk away. But we are not going to, are we?" Clara's voice was a bare whisper. "No, I do not think we are." "Then I suppose we keep doing what we have been, one day at a time. We stay honest and patient. We will not make promises we cannot keep, but we will stop pretending something is not growing between us." "That is terrifying," Ethan said. Yes, Clara agreed. But playing it safe is starting to feel a whole lot scarier than taking this chance. He slowly reached out and tucked a stray piece of hair behind her ear. She leaned into his touch, a small movement that said more than words ever could. I do not know how to do this, he admitted. I do not know how to care for someone without just waiting for the other shoe to drop. I do not know how to let someone in without expecting them to use it against me, Clara answered. So I suppose we will have to learn the way together. They stood there on the edge of something that felt like destiny and disaster all at once. Then Clara did something bold. She closed the small gap between them and rested her forehead on his chest. It was a gesture of pure trust that stole Ethan's breath. He wrapped his arms around her gently, like she was the most precious thing in the world. They did not kiss or speak of the future. They just held each other by the fire, knowing that the safe distance they had kept was now gone forever. They were choosing to be scared together instead of being safe and all alone. This is likely a mistake, Clara mumbled into his shirt. Probably, Ethan agreed, and he felt her soft laugh. We are both going to get cold feet and try to run for the hills at some point. Almost certainly. We should at least try to give each other a heads up before we bolt. That sounds fair. Clara pulled back just enough to look at him, her smile a little shaky but real. What do we tell people? Martha will know something is different. Samuel is already suspicious. We tell them the truth, Ethan said, surprised by his own certainty. We tell them we are two people who are tired of being lonely. We are just trying to see if something real can be built without all the games that ruined things for us before. And if they ask if we are courting? Clara considered it. I think we are doing something that does not have a name yet. Something that is just for us. Is that okay? That is more than okay, Ethan said, and he meant it with his whole heart. They stood that way until the fire was nothing but embers. When they finally pulled apart, it felt like two drowning people who had just found air. Clara gave him a quick, light kiss on the cheek that wrecked him completely. Then she left him alone in the dark. He was terrified. But underneath the fear was a feeling that was awfully close to peace. The next morning, the ranch was buzzing with gossip. A young ranch hand swore he had seen the boss holding Mrs. Hale by the library window, and it did not look like business. By breakfast, everyone knew. Samuel found Ethan in the barn, not bothering to beat around the bush. So, you and Clara? There is no you and Clara, Ethan said, focusing too hard on a horse's hoof. Son, I have known you since you were knee-high to a grasshopper. Do not lie to me. Ethan stood up straight. We are figuring something out. That is all I know. Samuel's expression softened. Is she good to you? The question caught Ethan off guard. Not if she was worthy or after his money, but was she good to him? She sees me, Ethan said quietly. Not the ranch or the money. Just me. And for some reason, she thinks I am worth the trouble. Well then, that is all that matters, boss. In the kitchen, Martha gave Clara the same look. So, you and Ethan? Clara sighed. Does everyone on this ranch have eyes in the back of their head? It is a small place, dear. Are you happy? Clara thought about it for a real moment, then nodded slowly. I think I am starting to be. I am scared to death, and I have no idea what we are doing, but yes, I think I am happy. Then the rest is just noise, Martha said. You are both grown. You both know what you are getting into, and you are both brave enough to try even though you are scared. That counts for something. The days that followed settled into a new kind of rhythm, the same but different in every way. They still had coffee in the kitchen, but now his hand might brush hers, sending a spark between them. They still spent evenings in the library, but now they shared one sofa, their shoulders touching. They talked about everything, his plans for the ranch, her memories of home, their deepest fears. Clara told him how she learned to make herself small and quiet. Ethan told her about the heavy weight of his father's legacy. They never rushed. They just existed in the same space, learning each other and building trust slowly. But some moments felt like promises. The way his hand would rest on the small of her back, the way she would gently touch his jaw when she thought he was not looking. They both started sleeping better, as if just being understood was enough to keep the nightmares away. 2 weeks later, Clara found Ethan in his study, looking worn out. She came up behind him and started rubbing the knots from his shoulders. "You do not have to do that." "I know. I want to." After a while, he caught her hand and pulled her around to face him. "Move in," he said. Clara looked confused. "I already live here." "No, I mean stop sleeping in the guest room. Stay with me. Not for anything more, but because I am tired of—" "You chose me, not for security, but because we offered each other the truth. That is worth more than comfort or what people think. So, what will you do with the letter?" Ethan looked at the letter, then at the fire. "I think I will burn it. Not because I am angry, but because that part of my life is over. Margaret deserves to be happy, and I deserve to stop letting that hurt define me." He tossed the letter into the flames. Together they watched 7 years of pain turn into ash. "I have something to ask you," Ethan said as the last piece disappeared. "And I am asking because it is what I want, and I hope it is what you want too." Clara turned to him, her eyes full of questions. "Marry me," Ethan said, "not because it makes sense or because people expect it. Not because you need a protector or I need a wife. Marry me because what we have built here is real. I was done walking past your door each night pretending I didn't want to be right there beside you. I was tired of my own empty bed when you were just down the hall a ways. I just want—" "Yes," Clara whispered, cutting him off. "Yes, I want that too." And just like that, Clara brought her few things into Ethan's room. They laid there awake, talking clear through till sunrise. They were tangled up under a pile of heavy quilts, feeling safe and warm, and finally not so alone anymore. For the first time in 7 long years, Ethan Blackwood fell asleep with his guard down. He didn't dream of being left or losing someone. Instead, he dreamed of a thaw coming to a frozen land, of a future that felt less like a fortress and a whole lot more like home. Spring was slow to come to Montana that year. But inside that house, a warmth had already set in that had nothing to do with the weather. You could see the change in all the little things. Laughter now bounced around rooms that had been quiet for too long. The lamplight even seemed to have a softer glow. Breakfast wasn't a lonely chore anymore, but a shared moment before the day's work kicked off. One morning in late March, Ethan woke up and found Clara already awake, just watching him. Sunlight was peeking through the curtains, making her eyes look almost silver. "How long have you been up?" he asked, his voice still thick with sleep. "Long enough to figure something out," she said. Her tone was serious and got his full attention. "We've been living like this for nearly 3 months, building this life, but we've never once talked about what comes next." A familiar knot of fear tightened in Ethan's chest. "Do we need to?" "I think we do. I was lying here watching you and I realized something. I'm not afraid anymore." She stopped for a second, then shook her head. "No, that is not true. It scares me half to death." "But not saying what I feel scares me a whole lot more." He sat right up, the blankets falling around him. "Clara, just let me get this out," she said, finding her courage. "I came here telling myself all I needed was a job and a safe place to land. I told myself I didn't want anything else. But that was a lie. I was lying because wanting things had only ever brought me pain. And I figured if I stopped wanting, I would stop hurting." "I know," Ethan said softly. "I did the same thing." "Well," Clara continued, "what I've learned is that not wanting things doesn't stop them from coming to you. And somewhere between us sharing coffee in your kitchen and me falling asleep in your arms, I stopped pretending. I stopped pretending that I did not want you." The words just hung there in the quiet room, so honest and so brave. Ethan felt a final wall crumble inside his chest. "I love you," Clara said, plain and simple. And it was like a key turning in a lock he had forgotten was there. "I do not need you and you do not need me. But I love you all the same." I love how stubborn you are and how kind and how you act like you do not care about things that mean the world to you. I love how you treat your men with respect and your horses with a gentle hand. I love that you just let me be me. Ethan couldn't find any words. He could hardly even breathe. I'm not asking you to say it back, she went on, her voice trembling just a bit. I am not asking for promises we are both scared of. I just had to tell you. I had to stop being so careful and just tell you the truth. Ethan finally found his voice. That night you fell off your horse when I thought you were truly hurt. I realized something. I was so busy guarding my heart against another Margaret that I couldn't see what was right here in front of me. You are nothing like her, and what we have is nothing like that was. He reached out and took her hand in his. I love you too. I reckon I have loved you since that first day you told me you wanted nothing from me but a fair wage for a fair day's work. I just couldn't say it. Admitting it felt like risking this whole fortress I had built around myself. Tears welled up in Clara's eyes, but she was smiling wide. So what do we do now? He asked. I suppose, Ethan said, pulling her in close. We stop hiding from each other. We stop waiting for things to go wrong. We just love each other honestly and with all our flaws and trust that it is enough. That simple? He asked. That complicated, she corrected, and then she kissed him. It was a kiss from a woman who had finally stopped running from her own heart. They stayed tangled up as the sun climbed higher, talking about everything and nothing. They were finally brave enough to make plans for a future that included two people. But spring in Montana is never easy, and neither is building a new life. The real test showed up a week later. A man brought a letter to the ranch for Ethan. The handwriting on it turned his blood to ice. It was from Margaret. He just stood there in his study, holding that envelope, feeling a strange calm. Clara found him, saw the look on his face, and quietly shut the door. What is it? She asked. A letter from Margaret. He couldn't bring himself to open it. Clara walked over, gently took the envelope, and set it down on his desk. Do you want to be alone to read it? No, Ethan said right away. No, I do not want to do anything alone anymore. That was the whole problem before. I handled everything by myself and called it being strong. Stay with me. Always, Clara said. Her simple promise gave him the strength he needed. He opened the letter with her standing right there beside him, her presence a steady anchor. The letter was written in Margaret's fancy script. Reading it felt like stepping back into a past he thought he had locked away for good. Dearest Ethan, I hope you are well. I know this must be a surprise. I have written this letter a dozen times only to tear it up. But I am finally sending it because I owe you an apology that is 7 years late. I was wrong, Ethan. Wrong about Montana, wrong about the kind of life worth living, and wrong about what truly matters. I spent all this time in Boston getting everything I thought I wanted. I married a professor and I live in a beautiful house. And I am completely and utterly miserable. It took me too long to see that being comfortable is not the same as being happy. I see now that I traded the chance for real love for a life of convenience. It was the worst deal I've ever made. I am not asking you to take me back. I know I hurt you too badly for that. I am writing to say you were right all along. You were right to believe that love and partnership are what count. You deserved someone who would choose you over an easy life. I hope with everything in me that you have found that person now. I will regret losing you for the rest of my days. But I hope knowing you were right about it all brings you some peace. Be well, Ethan. Be happy. And know that I wish you all the joy I was too afraid to build with you. With sincere regret, Margaret. Ethan read the letter 2 times through, then laid it on the desk. He waited to feel angry, or to feel good about being right. But all he felt was a quiet sadness for the woman he used to love, and for all the years they both wasted being scared. How do you feel? Clara asked him softly. Ethan turned to her, to this woman who was brave enough to walk into his life and show him how to tear down his own walls. I feel sorry for her, he said, and it was the honest truth. And I feel grateful. Grateful. If she had not left, I never would have built this ranch. I never would have become the man I needed to be to deserve you. All that pain from before was just getting me ready for you. Clara's smile was a little shaky. That is a mighty generous way to look at it. It is the truth. Margaret made her choice out of fear, and now she lives with it. My choices were made from pain, but they led me right here. The difference is, I found someone brave enough to choose love instead. He pulled Clara close, feeling the steady rhythm of her heart against his own. We chose each other based on honesty, she said. That's worth more than just feeling safe. At that moment, he remembered the letter from Margaret that had arrived last week. He hadn't known what to do with it. Now he did. I think I'll burn it, he said, pulling it from his desk drawer. Not because I'm angry, it's just the chapter is over. He tossed the letter into the fireplace. They stood together and watched 7 years of old hurt and fear turn into ash. I have to ask you something, Ethan said, his voice quiet but sure. And I'm only asking because it's what I want more than anything. He turned to face her. Marry me, Clara. Not for convenience or protection. Marry me because what we have right here, it's the realest thing I've ever known. I want something real and imperfect, something that lasts. Marry me, Clara. I love you, and I want to spend the rest of my days proving it. She could hardly breathe. Ethan, I know you said you were done with marriage. I know you came here to be left alone, but that was before. It was before we built this thing between us that feels like it could last forever. I am not asking you to be who you were before. I am just asking you to be my wife. Tears ran down Clara's cheeks, but she smiled right through them. You are supposed to give a lady a chance to answer before you keep on talking. Then answer me, Ethan said, his voice full of a hope he had not felt in 7 long years. Yes, Clara said. Yes, I will marry you. Yes, to building something real. They sealed their promise with a kiss that felt like the end of being alone and the beginning of being found. When they finally broke apart, they were both laughing and crying at the same time, dizzy with relief. The news traveled across the ranch faster than a wildfire. Martha cried and hugged them both, saying she knew it from the very first morning. Samuel gave Ethan a firm handshake that turned into a rare hug, whispering, "About damn time, son." The ranch hands threw a rowdy party in the bunkhouse that night. Robert the Wrangler raised his glass and said what everyone was thinking. To the boss, who sent away every woman after his money, and to the lady who only came for a job and found something a whole lot better. 6 weeks later, on a clear morning in May when the whole world was green, they were married. It was a small thing, just the ranch family and a traveling preacher. Martha cried happy tears through the whole ceremony. Clara wore a simple cream-colored dress she had sewn herself. Ethan wore his best suit, the one he used to wear to business meetings. He did not need to impress folks anymore. They stood in the parlor with the windows wide open to the spring air and made promises that were nothing like the ones they had made before. I promise to truly see you, Ethan said, your fears and your strengths. I promise to love you for who you are, not what you do. I will build a life with you and choose you every single day. Clara's voice was steady when she spoke. I promise to always be honest with you. I will love you without holding back. I promise to remember you are more than this ranch, more than anything you can build or buy. I will be your partner in all of it. When the preacher declared them married, Ethan kissed his wife like a man who had finally learned the difference between being safe and being happy. And Clara kissed him back like a woman who was done just surviving and was ready to start living. The party that followed was simple and joyful. Later, Ethan stood watching Clara dance with Samuel. The old foreman appeared at his side. "You did good, boss," he said quietly. "I got lucky," Ethan replied. "No, sir. Luck is finding something by chance. You two built this. You made yourself a man worthy of her, and she got brave enough to want you. That is not luck. That is hard work." Ethan watched his wife, her face bright with happiness. Samuel was right. This was something they had chosen. They had chosen it over and over again. Both of them had been broken by life, but they used those broken pieces to understand one another. Later that night, when the house was quiet, they stood on their balcony, looking out at the stars. Clara leaned against Ethan's chest. Do you remember telling me you did not know how to want something without expecting to lose it? She asked. I remember. Are you still waiting for that? He thought about the fear he had carried for so long. To his surprise, it was almost gone. It was not completely gone, but it no longer had a hold on him. No, he said, feeling the truth of it deep in his bones. I am not waiting for loss anymore. I am just grateful for right now. Good, Clara said, turning to face him, because I'm not going anywhere. I am staying for this, for you and for us. Even when it is hard? Ethan asked. Especially when it is hard, she said. That is when it matters most. They stood there for a long time, two people who had been alone for so long they had forgotten how it felt to be known. The years that followed were not always easy. They argued sometimes and had to work through old hurts. But they always did the work. They chose each other, even on the hard days. The ranch kept doing well, but Ethan started measuring his success in a new way. He measured it in the sound of Clara's laughter filling rooms that had been silent for too long. He measured it in the children who eventually filled their home with noise and life. Clara truly came into her own. She took over the house accounts and showed a sharp head for business. She even started a small school for the children of the ranch hands. She raised her own children with fierce love and common sense. On some nights, they would find themselves back in the library where they first spoke honestly. They would talk about the people they used to be. The cold rancher who had turned away 20 women, and the quiet widow who thought she wanted nothing at all. Do you ever wonder what would have happened if I had not come here that day? Clara asked him one night many years later. I try not to, Ethan said honestly, because I reckon I would still be alone in this big house, thinking that being tough was the same thing as being strong. And I would probably be somewhere else, believing that not wanting anything was the same as being happy. We were both just scared, Clara corrected him gently. Then we found each other and we learned how to be brave. Ethan held her. You know, I spent years looking for a woman who wanted me, not my ranch. But you taught me it is not that simple. You wanted me, but you also wanted the life we could build here together. And that was not wrong. It was honest. Margaret was wrong about what matters, Clara said. But you were wrong too, thinking that loving what you built made the love less real. Real love is not one thing or the other. It is both. And I love you and the life we have together. Those two things are not separate. They are woven together so tight I cannot tell where one starts and the other ends. When did you get so wise? Ethan asked, a smile in his voice. It happened when I married a man stubborn enough to make me rethink everything. Clara looked up at him, her face dim in the dying firelight, but her eyes were bright and sure. You know, we almost missed this. We almost let fear win. If I had been too proud to ask for a job, if you had been too guarded to see me as anything but a woman after your fortune, we would have lost it all. But we did not, Ethan said with certainty. We were brave enough, and we keep on being brave enough. Every single day, Clara agreed, sealing her words with a kiss. Outside, snow started falling again. But inside the black wood house, a lasting warmth had made its home. In the kitchen, bread dough was rising for the morning, and upstairs, children slept safe and sound. In the library, two people who were once set on facing the world alone held each other, grateful they found the courage to face it together. The cold had left Ethan Blackwood's heart a long time ago. What grew in its place was better than safety and more valuable than any ranch he could have built on his own. In its place was a real and honest home. It was built not on business deals or walls, but on two people brave enough to choose each other, day after day. And in the end, that was worth more than all the gold in the world. This content was carefully researched, developed, and manually edited by our team to deliver meaningful stories with valuable life lessons. Every narrative is crafted to entertain, inspire, and empower our audience. We believe that great stories can change lives, and we are committed to bringing you content that matters. Thank you for being part of our community.